Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Open Room Live. It is January, and here we are kicking off the year with our Open Room Live for 2024. So we're going to be doing these every month for the rest of the year, bringing you a platform where we're going to be looking at some training modules, some content all around organizational empathy, listening-led leadership, and how we engage multi-generational workforces. A lot of our content sits in communication skills, some of it sits in engagement skills, but generally we're looking at how do we create a more empathetic workplace and world. Now, in true openness, I had slides for this and they have disappeared around about 35 seconds before I went live, and I didn't want to be late for all of you. So I'm going to not share slides today, but normally we will have slides and you will be able to get a copy of them. So after the session, you will be able to message me and I can send them over to you. But today, really what I wanted to talk about is the concept of an open room. Right? On two levels. First of all, what our open room is, but second of all, on a far wider level, why organizations need far more open rooms and why the old idea of an open door policy is really stuck in the past. But let's start with what open room is. So I created Open Room as a community platform within all the work that we're doing to create conversation and to overcome loneliness, to really create opportunity for people to connect with the non-like-minded, hear their stories, have conversation, and overcome the barriers between us. Now, what do we know about empathy? What we know about empathy is that when it goes up, all of the isms go down. And what I mean by isms, racism, ageism, sexism, nationalism, any of the isms. So any of the things that pull us apart, often in fear, decrease when our shared understanding goes up. And the goal of Open Room was to create that. It's now grown to over 200 people. The majority of them are sitting in a WhatsApp group. Some of them are also on an Instagram broadcast group. And we share on there 3 times a week. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and sometimes with some bonus content on a Sunday. I share thoughts in there, templates, free webinars. We have a movie night, various different pieces of information and content where you can connect into this sphere of empathy-led listening and leadership, as well as connecting with other people from around the world. What we realized is that organizing lots of geographical events, whilst a huge part of our strategy, and it is happening, we have our first Open Room Live in Colombo in February, and then hopefully in Dubai in March. It would be great to gather you all here live online once a month with a different discussion. Now, in other good news, I have a brand new column going live in CEO magazine, and the first one will go out in about 2 days' time. And what I want to do is match this Open Room Live content every month to the content of the column, which really has 12 installments of leadership content for the year, looking at the role of listening-led leadership, how you create engagement, what that means for overcoming conflict, how we shorten the gaps between us in multi-generational workplaces, and fundamentally how we use communication skills and listening skills to change the world. Okay, so the thing about communication is it has to be two-way, and often we think about talking before we think about listening. But imagine what might happen in our world if we hired leaders that could listen more than they could speak, right? So instead of looking for leaders that speak well on a stage, how about hiring leaders that listen well? Why do we need to do that? And what difference would it make to our world? Well, in this first column, I'm really talking about the idea of having an open room, an open environment in the workplace to create authentic, connected environments that welcome a few key things: opinion, discussion, and contribution. Okay. And within that, for all of you that came to the psychological safety workshop in December, we talked a lot about being able to challenge, right? To be able to challenge or criticize. In an open room environment where you have these listening-led leaders, these environments allow people to turn up, to show up, to share their opinions, to have ideas, to create discussion. And it goes way beyond accessibility. Okay, so an open door policy, used to hear that a lot back in the day, is about accessibility. It says, I am accessible to you. The door is open, which, by the way, in my experience, it nearly never was. But anyway, that's by the by. It was about accessibility. Today, it's about far more than that. It's about authenticity, right? It's about authenticity of that leader truly welcoming discussion, debate, and engagement from the people that they are leading. Now, here's some interesting data, okay? So according to Harvard Business Review, organizations with open communication channels, open rooms where people can come and share their opinions, give feedback, and discuss with their leadership teams are 3.5 times more likely to outperform their peers, right? So you are 3.5 times more likely to be able to outcompete your competition in the market if you have open communication channels. And that is for very good and probably quite obvious reasons. As humans, we need two fundamental things. We need to be seen and we need to be heard, okay? And that transforms a workplace. When you have people that feel that they're recognized, that feel seen and heard, they're able to do a couple of things, but not least of which is to manage fear, to manage self-censorship, and to openly share strategically and creatively, to stand up, step out, and share transparent, valuable insight, intel, and opinion. Okay. So the data shows that we have 3.5 times more success when we have those open communication channels. And yet today, only 32% of employees feel that their leaders are genuinely transparent. I would love to know where you sit in that. So if you are on LinkedIn or Instagram watching this, tell me if you're comfortable. Do you fall within the 32% of employees that feel that your leaders are not listening to you at all? Or if you're a leader, do you think within your wider organization that you sit within that space? Is there 32% of your workforce that feels that you are not listening to them? Or do you think it's totally different? Are you seeing something different? I would love to hear. So please pop it in the chat box. My wonderful marketing team is here with me. And so pop it in there. They'll make sure I can see them. We will pop your data on the screen as long as it comes through to us. And if you've got any questions, just let me know. I would love to know what you think about that data. Fundamentally, what it says to me is if you are not listening to your high performers, in fact, if you are not listening to all of your team, they will go somewhere else. Okay, they will vote with their feet. My belief is that one of the backbone realities behind the Great Resignation, which we heard so much about in 2022, 23, 2021, was this: people did not feel that their organizations could hear them or respect them or understand their needs in the market. And when I work, most of my work is in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. We don't have a lot of data specific to those regions, but based on my consulting work in those local markets, I believe that that data is probably higher in some of our more traditional markets in Asia and the Middle East, because most of that data from Harvard Business Review is global, or at least American. But again, what we do know from the data, and this one is Forbes actually, is that employees who feel their voices are heard are 4.6 times more likely to do their best work, right? So however you cut this cake, when you have this open room environment where people feel that they can contribute and share and be part of the process, they do a couple of things. They work harder, they stay longer, they're more loyal, and they're happier in the workplace. And I would challenge any leader not to look for a mix of those 3 or 4 things, okay? So we're talking about the direct link between listening to your staff and the response and feedback and performance that you get out of those teams. So a lot of my work now is in what we call multi-generational teams, okay? Again, predominantly in the regions I work with, but not uniquely, we are seeing for the first time ever 4 generations in a workplace, okay? So that means that we often have a chairperson at the top, perhaps sometimes in their 80s. In fact, recently one of my clients, they were even in their 90s and still in the office. You might have C-suite, maybe late 40s, early 50s, middle management, somewhere between sort of 30 and 40, and then all the way down to some of the entry-level people in the organization coming in at 18 years old, okay? So we have 4 generations in the workplace, and of course, they don't communicate on the same sphere. In fact, they don't even communicate on the same platforms, okay? So for many organizations, this is really challenging, but it's also really scary, okay? So they ask me, but Mimi, how can I listen to them when I don't understand them and they don't talk to me in the same language? And part of the answer around organizational empathy is to have empathy both ways. So if you are a young person listening to this in the workplace, I would love to hear what you think. Do you think it is your responsibility to empathize up? Because what I find in most of the organizations I work with, and this is from Coca-Cola, Pfizer, Unilever, the Metropolitan Police Service, like massively diverse organizations that I'm working in, they all say the same thing. One of the biggest challenges is that the leaders at the top are beginning, let's be politically correct, beginning to really be interested in understanding down throughout the ranks, right? Really understanding the people below them. But are the people at the bottom as interested in empathizing with those at the top and changing your language and looking at how you communicate? And just because something is lit offline doesn't mean that it should be necessarily in the boardroom, right? So how are you using your language and how are you showing up? And is that enabling the best possible communication in the workplace? Equally, takes a huge amount of patience because you can't listen without making the time to listen, right? So, another one of the questions I get asked all the time is, how do I find the time to listen? I'm too busy, Mimi. I'm too busy and I don't have enough time. But I have a couple of answers to that too. Firstly, the more you listen, the faster you get at listening, right? Because you become attuned to how to do that, to how to lean in, to how to ask those questions. But secondarily, the more you listen, the more efficient your team becomes, the less long-winded the information you are listening to becomes, because people become better communicators, right? So that communication is on a far more ongoing, regular basis. It doesn't mean that you constantly have to sit and kind of move away from the room and have, long discussions and sessions where you're really listening to that insight. So listening is one of those skill sets that the more you do it, the quicker you get, but equally, the more your team feels heard, the better they get at communicating and the more empathic they become with you to communicate in a way that as a leader, you can truly understand. So I would love to hear some of your thoughts. If you're here with us live, please pop them below somewhere in one of the messaging boxes on whatever platform you're on. And if you're not here with us live, but you're watching this on replay, put them in the comments anyway, because I will come back this evening and tomorrow and answer all your questions. And particularly on LinkedIn, I find that lots of the feedback comes within the next 24 hours. So thoughts, questions, comments, data sets from your country, please put them below. I will definitely come back to you, and it will be really interesting for me to listen to you about what's going on in your workplaces, where you are and what you are seeing and where that's coming from. So do pop it in there. And as I said, I promise I will come back to you. But for now, that is just about enough for a Wednesday evening, a midweek virtual open room, just to raise the question of why we're doing this, right? Why do we need open rooms, and why is accessibility, open doors, not enough for the people in our workplaces today? We have to go beyond accessibility. Your access as a leader is table stakes. You have to be accessible, okay? That was like the 1990s. Today, we're talking about authentic ability to communicate, to be heard, to be able to share your opinion, and as a leader, to be able to lean in to the people in your teams and have those conversations. So if you're interested in joining Open Room, pop on over. It's totally free. It's totally open. We will put the link in the comments box here below for anybody that wants to come through. As I said at the beginning, it sits on WhatsApp, excuse me, and on Instagram broadcast. We share 3 to 4 times a week. There are webinars, trainings, downloadable PDFs, ebooks, a movie night, live events in your cities, where we share all around empathy, leadership, and self-empathy, the ability to understand yourself, your wellness, your body, and your being. So lots of content going on over there. It's a really safe space. It is welcoming to everyone. We have both a broadcast platform and a community platform. So if you're interested in WhatsApp on talking to others and sharing photos and seeing stuff from around the world, we have members from Singapore, Dubai, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Jordan, London, Canada, all in there, the States. But if you just want to be fed this information, you can join just the announcement channels, no spam, and just get access to those tools that come out 3 times a week for you to download or look at on your cell phone. So do pop on over. We'll put the link below for you to join us, or just DM me with any questions. And as I said, the next Open Room Live event will be in Colombo, in fact, on the 21st of February, but we haven't quite announced that yet. In February, and then March, I'm hoping to do Dubai, and then depending on where I end up in April, it should be in Cape Town. So lots of new events coming soon. I would love to hear more about what you want me to share at those events. But equally, if you are keen to come and join me and speak at those events, because they are fundamentally storytelling platforms. So you can see those magical words flying across the bottom there. The more the world talks about empathy, the more empathy the world will have. And this is me signing on and out on a Wednesday to share a little bit more empathy with you in your weeks and your workplaces. And if you need anything at all, as many of you know, just reach out and let me know, and I will definitely come back to you. Penny Tainton, you snuck in there just before I logged off. So she's Penny there, just adding a thought, which says, from South Africa, there are challenges in communication across multiple different cultural groups that needs to be considered. And I think it's a really, really valuable point there, Penny. Absolutely. Lots of our work is extending into that space, right, which is multicultural environments, as well as those multi-generational environments. And some of that goes hand in hand, but some of it is very different. So one of the big differentiating factors there is between high context and low context cultures, right? And the communication systems that go with that. In a high context culture, of which many markets in Africa and Asia, many of them are, what that means is there is a lot of context to what is being communicated in the room. So the simple yes, no answer, or the statement that you hear in the boardroom often has a lot behind it, a lot of context, whether that's to do with hierarchy, social structure, culture, beliefs, traditions, all of these types of things. So to give you an example of that, with an organization I work with in Kenya, one of the senior leaders in the room was the vice president in the room and had her team below her. But in the team below her was the oldest son of the chief of her village, who in a social environment would be above her, right? So when she was outside the workplace, she was in a social structure where this man was more senior to her. But every time they went into the office, that power shifted because she was the vice president of that unit. So then she was the boss, right? So when we talk about high context cultures, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about this highly unique, depending on where you are, environment that changes how you understand how people communicate, what they say, what they do, what they mean when they say different things. And in low context cultures like the USA, Europe, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, you see that less. That doesn't mean that there's no culture in those markets. Of course, it just means that in the low context cultures, there is a far more direct connection between what is said or seen and what is meant, right? What is the message behind that behavioral, that communication? So Penny, thank you for adding that. It's a really, really valuable point. And I think we need to do much more work on that. In fact, when we launch our Empathy Everywhere Academy, which is coming late February, there will be one of our modules and pieces of course content there around this high versus low context culture and what that means from an empathy point of view. I shared this morning, actually. Oh, I think my video froze. Let me turn it on and off. There I am. I shared this morning on LinkedIn about the word Sawubona, also from South Africa, where Penny was commenting from just then, and our need to recognize, to acknowledge people as the person they are beyond the behavior that they're showing. And I think that in those multicultural workplaces, that is even more relevant and powerful, right? Which is that how people are behaving is not necessarily a full reflection of what they mean or need in the room at the time. So Penny, thank you for sharing that just before I dialed off, because that was a really, really good point there, which is in many of our markets, the empathy that we need and the communication adaptation that we need is not just about age, of course, but also across cultural groups, of which there might be many in one environment. And we have to find that safe, psychologically safe approach to creating that middle ground and that space for people to be able to show up and enter your open room as a leader, right? To have that communication, disregarding whatever the other factors are surrounding that communication moment. So I really am signing off now, but I am extremely glad that you asked that question. Anybody else, please put the comments below. I will come back to you. And as I was saying just now, the more the world talks about empathy, the more empathy the world will have. So the more curious you are, the more questions you ask, and the more you want to know about this content, but far more importantly, all the people that you work with and share the planet with, the closer together we will be. And let's be honest, there has never been a time in history when we need to reconnect each other and close the gaps more than we do today. So thank you very much for coming. As ever, it's a pleasure. And I do have slides for this presentation. So they failed me today, but if you would like them, let me know because I can send them over to you. But thank you very much and have a lovely Wednesday. And I'll see you all soon.